This is Studio 22A, and this is part 2 of a 3-part series where we've taken this simple Lumion rendering and post-processed it using Photoshop to create this render in Collage hybrid. So I'm just going to start out here with a Photoshop file that I made using the image from the first video. And if you haven't seen that first video, I'll link that down below. It's definitely worth checking out. It's basically taking this first render I pulled out of Lumion and creating, I would say, the simplest out of the 3 collages that we'll be making. So in this one, what I'll be doing is using the rectangle marquee tool to create a solid fill background, which will represent our sky. And I'm just going to use the transform tool to manipulate the background that we just created, sort of fill the frame in a pleasing way and leave a bit of a white border around it. I'll also be creating a thin black strip around this solid sky that we've created using a square brush tool. And while still using the brush tool, we'll just change the color to have a lighter hue. And now moving to a cloud brush that I have preloaded here. So I'll try and link these down below. And what I'm trying to do here is just kind of create these clouds sort of more in the foreground and overlay them on top of the sky we have in the background. Now I'm kind of utilizing that white border we left to have the clouds kind of stick out from the canvas, kind of create a stylized image here with that. And after that, we can now just create a sun. So with this one, I'm just, keeping with the stylized nature of this collage. So I'm gonna have this sort of sun made by several offset circles. So again, I'm gonna play with the hue to sort of indicate that this is more in the foreground than the elements that we have behind it. And now using the curved pen tool, we'll just follow this circle that we created and sort of create this outline using a black dash line. And we'll just offset that as well. All right, that's looking good. So now just some basic housekeeping. We'll just group all those into one folder and create a new one for our entourage layers. So with that done, now we can import actual PNG images of people. So in this one, I'm going to use actual photographed images of people. So I guess the plan here is to have the bottom half of the image more photorealistic and the background / top half will be, stylized, and turning this into what will be a collage. So now I'm just duplicating each layer with the individual image on it. And what I'll be doing is filling that in solid black. So this will be the shadow layer, which will go directly underneath the actual layer of the image. And once we have that done, we're gonna have to pay attention to the direction that the shadows are being cast by the building and vegetation in the scene. And we're gonna have to match that direction or perspective by using the transform tool. So right now I'm just deleting a shadow that came with the image I imported. It's a pretty mild shadow and I think it'll compete with the one that I'm creating. So I'm just gonna go ahead and delete it. There's really no point in keeping it. So once that's done, we'll move on to the small boy that's in the background and transform that shadow. The one thing that's different about what I'm doing here is we actually have a bush that's sort of intersecting with his shadow, so you'll have to cut that a little bit, cut his shadow and transform it so that it lands vertically on the bush, since it wouldn't go flat down. That would sort of ruin the realism. And now we have both shadows correctly placed, we can move to a Gaussian blur filter for both. Just follow along with the settings that I use there. And then what we'll do is we'll lower the transparency of the layer to match how the shadows are looking in the scene best we can. So one of the last things I'll do here is pull up the burn tool, and we'll actually paint in a harsher shadow for all these cutout people that I've brought into this scene. So I've already imported people that match the light source for my scene, which in this case is the sun, but I think the shadows on these cutouts are pretty mild, so we'll just emphasize those a bit and darken them up. So now the very last thing we'll do is color grade the cutout people we have in the scene. So the quick way that we're going to do this is by copying both layers of the individual people and their corresponding shadows. Once you have that, you'll just fill them in solid. So I've got a brown color that I've just pulled from the shadows of the wood slats on the building we have in the background there. And with that done, we'll just change the blend mode of those layers that we created to overlay and lower the opacity. And you can already see that it has done a pretty good job at blending in the cutout images we have to the render that we have in the background. So it's looking good. I think it's almost done. One last thing I want to do before we end is with the eraser tool. We'll just use a large brush size with a pretty soft edge, and we'll just smoothen out or kind of blend out the edges of the shadow just so it doesn't end in a hard line. And I think that's already looking much better. So yeah, I think we can call it there. I think the image is complete. So there you have it. Once again, in just about 5 minutes, we created a pretty awesome looking render and collage hybrid image. So if you guys found this video helpful, definitely check out the next one that's coming up. I'll post it pretty soon. And if you like what's going on this channel and you want to see some more content, definitely like and subscribe. It helps me out and it'll motivate me to keep going and drop some more content for you guys. So thanks.